So it is my pleasure to welcome all of you to the first in the series of webinars to allow PKRxiv users to get to know some of the functionalities and how you can best take advantage of the resources that are available on the platform. So my name is Adeniyi Olagunju. I'm based here at the University of Liverpool, and I lead a team that develop the PKRxiv. So today's webinar is focused on how we can unlock access to individual level pharmacokinetic data that are available on PKRxiv. And just to make a start, I would like to start with acknowledgement. PKRxiv is part of a large funding provided by the Wellcome Trust. So it's part of a larger project that enables us to do what we do in the perinatal pharmacology group. And I also like to acknowledge my colleagues who are members of the perinatal pharmacology group. If you want to get to know more about the group, you can scan this QR code and it takes you straight to the group page on the university website. I also acknowledge my colleagues here in the University of Liverpool, especially those based at the Center of Excellence for Long-Acting Therapeutics, CELT. And just to highlight the fact that we do a lot of other things in the perinatal pharmacology group. So like I mentioned previously, this is part of a program of work funded by Wellcome Trust. We're involved in a couple of other projects, and these are some examples as well as the key collaborators that we work with on these various projects. But this particular webinar will be focused on PKRxiv, which is a post-print PK data sharing platform. So I'd like to start by telling you a little bit about the summary of what PKRxiv is about. It's a collaborative platform for sharing individual level pharmacokinetic data and associated covariates. And these are some of the unique features. It has an interactive web interface that allows users to visualize the data before they go ahead to request it. And this interactive web interface is connected with a database that provides users with access to the data that they're asking for. And our goal is really to facilitate access to these types of data that users can use to qualify PK models, including the example shown here, which is the structure of a physiologically based pharmacokinetic model, but it can be used, of course, for other type of modeling, qualification and validation. And this was developed in collaboration with a wide range of stakeholders within the University of Liverpool and externally. And if you pay attention to this part of this slide, you notice that the data set that are available on PKRxiv can be contributed by any investigator, no matter where they are. It can be data sets contributed by research networks who are involved in these types of study or clinical pharmacokinetic studies. A lot of these came from our collaborators, and we will continue to get those types of data sets. And a lot of them also came from in-house data set, studies that we conducted within the perinatal pharmacology group, and others that we contributed to within the University of Liverpool or other institutions with which we're affiliated. So that's a summary of PKRxiv. And let me show you the site map. When you go on the website, this is how the site is mapped out. We get to the home page. From the home page, you can get access to the Data Explorer. That's what we call the data visualization web interface. This gives you access to filter the available data using different criteria, including the examples that are shown here. This is accessible to anyone, whether they have an account or they don't. And then there is the data cards page, which requires login. Data request page, data sharing page, resources page is open to anyone as well. And you can also manage your account where you can get access to your workspace as well as your profile in case you need to make any changes and so on. So this is how the site is mapped out. So what we're focusing on today, which is requesting data on PKRxiv, will allow me to show you some aspect of this, particularly those related to data request, how you select data, how you request the data, and how you then manage your data request through the workspace. So we're going to go through these gradually. But before we do that, you might be wondering, why did we create this platform? And I categorize these into two broad categories. And the first reason is because there is a lot of benefit for sharing data from funded research. And this is just some of the benefits. It provides a benefit beyond the original study aim. It helps us to speed up scientific inquiry and discovery. It reduces unnecessary duplication in research. It increases productivity as well as promote innovation. The second reason is because there are a lot of issues with using generalist repositories for sharing pharmacokinetic data from clinical pharmacology studies. And this is some of them. Almost all of these generalist repository, you can consider them as siloed data lockers because each data set is stored in isolation without the possibility of any cross-study integration within the platform. And the second one under this is the fact that these are static archiving platforms. They're stored without any dynamic linkage between them. So these are the two major reasons why we created this platform. So we wanted to contribute to creating a tool, a platform for the clinical pharmacology community that would not be associated with any of these limitations. So let me show you what PKRxiv offers. This is just a collection of 10 of the things that PKRxiv offers. There are a lot more. The first one that I put here is the fact that it's a post-print data repository. So the data set that you find on PKRxiv, they came from studies that are already peer-reviewed and published. So it is post-print, not pre-print. It is managed open access. Yes, it is open access, but users need to create an account before they can request for the data that you find in PKRxiv. And the data set are fully anonymized individual level PK data. When we publish studies in journals, we publish aggregated data sets, summaries. But what we're providing, what we offer on PKRxiv is individual level data sets. And it's not just PK data set, but also the associated covariates and demographic data, like the age, the body weight, and all the other covariates that you can think of. Associated covariate that you might find very important sometimes in clinical pharmacology studies of pharmacogenetic data, like, for instance, single nucleotide polymorphisms in genes that are associated with drug disposition, maybe genes in that encode drug metabolizing enzymes or drug transporters. So if the polymorphisms associated with those genes are available from the study, you can access those on PKRxiv as well. And another associated covariate would include safety and efficacy data set. And the platform facilitates cross-study integration so that when you are interested in the particular drug, the data set that you can have access to is not just from a single study. It allows you to have the ability for cross-study integration of several data sets on your drug of interest, as well as any other particular features for the data set you're interested in. Our digital object identifier is assigned to each data set when they are contributed on PKRxiv. We come to why this is important later on when we talk about fair data sharing. And when you look at the different places from which data set from PKRxiv originate, it provides you with access to a globally representative data set. Like I mentioned previously, it has an interactive data visualization interface, which allows you to actually visualize the data before you make a decision as to whether you want to request a data set or not. And it supports various study designs. For instance, If you're looking for data set from sparse PK study, intensive PK study, drug-drug interaction studies, food-drug interaction studies, herb-drug interaction studies, first-in-human study, pregnancy, postpartum, all of those types of data set are supported on PKRxiv. And lastly, it is collaborative in nature, meaning that you can simply go on the platform and do it whenever you want. But of course, if you struggle with any aspect of the process, we have support available to contribute to your experience. So these are just a selection of some of the things that PKRxiv offers. Now, if you think about this in the context of FAIR principles, over so many years, we've advocated as a community in general that data should be findable, that we want to share data and we want it to be findable. And this basically means that it should be easy to find it. And this should be for humans and for machines. And these are some of the additional details under this. The second attribute or principle is accessibility. And this means once you find the data, it should be retrievable using standardized protocols. It shouldn't be so complicated that you need to learn a particular unique protocol to be able to access the data. Again, these are some of the additional details. And one that I particularly like to highlight is this third one, which is the fact that access procedures should be clearly defined, including if there is a need for authentication and authorization. And this is important because sometimes when we talk about accessibility, we can make the mistake of thinking that that means the data should always be openly accessible without any need for authorization or request. But that's not what accessibility means under FAIR principles. It means if there are access procedures, they should be clearly defined. And then the third is interoperability. And this means data should be integrated with other data and tools. And lastly, reusability. Our data should be ready for future research and reuse. And these are some of the additional details. And one of the key details here is the fact that the data should meet community standards. We made a lot of effort in developing PKRxiv, and all of these were key principles that we ensured are integrated into the development and the different functionalities that are available on the platform. A little bit more detail about the FAIR principles. This is the fact that it's like a spectrum. So in other words, fairness when it comes to scientific data sharing is not a binary situation. It's not a case of either it is fair or not fair. No, it's like a continuum. And you can see that when you move from A all the way to F in this image that I took from this publication from 2017. Of course, we don't want to be here. This is what we aim for, but occasionally we've got to be here because of some issues around consent, regulatory guidance, like the GDPR in the UK and EU, as an example. So I thought I should mention it just to put that right at the front, that fairness is a spectrum. And we want to be as close as possible to this, but if we can move away from this, we're already ticking some of the boxes. And here's another additional detail that I took from this particular publication from the EU, and it tries to illustrate the connection between fair data and open data. They are two separate things, but if we can bring the two together to overlap, that will be brilliant. And that's what we aim to do. We're trying to make the sharing of PK data on PKRxiv, we're trying to make it fair, and we're also trying to make it as open as possible. So this is where we aim to be, and we're really close to being right in the middle of this. Now, the second aspect of the things that we mentioned in the advert for this webinar that I would like to cover is to try and illustrate why data sharing from PK studies is really critical for development in clinical pharmacology in general and for drug development as a whole. And I would like to illustrate this using model-informed drug development. If you have been following the trends over the years, model-informed drug development is now fully embedded within regulatory framework. It is now part of regulatory submission, and every major drug regulatory agency in the world now has a framework that allows them to accept our data set from modeling associated with drug development. And these are some examples of potential applications of MIDD in the process of drug development. And there is a lot of benefit. It reduces reliance on animal models. If you follow recent news, you notice some of the major funders and drug regulatory agencies in the US are already taking steps towards reducing animal use in research. It also shortens drug development timelines. A study confirmed that up to 10 months can be saved if model-informed drug development strategies are adopted as part of the drug development process. It reduces costs of $5 million per program, drug development program. And it also facilitates smaller and more targeted clinical trials. So these are just some of the benefits. So when you then think of the benefit of access to individual PK data and the associated covariates, how that can facilitate MIDD, these are some of the benefits. It accelerates innovation in all these modeling approaches. It strengthens model validation and reproducibility. It enables cross-study integration and meta-modeling and enhances regulatory confidence and utility. It also promotes ethical and efficient use of data. If you think about this last component, we conduct our clinical studies and we inform patients about the benefits for the wider scientific community when they contribute their data or their samples for our studies. So it is only ethical to ensure that that benefit is achieved. Right? Of course, before we share data for wider scientific use, we want to make sure that that is fully integrated into the consent that we get from the patients. But it is an integral part of what we achieve when we provide access to individual level PK data and associated covariates. Now, just to further illustrate the different stages of drug development and how model-informed drug development approaches can be beneficial. These are the different stages with some highlights of things that take place during those stages. These are just examples of MIDD tools that will benefit from individual level PK data and associated covariates. And if you think about which of these stages these tools might be useful for, this is what I found from a recent paper. For instance, when you look at physiologically based pharmacokinetic models, you notice that this is used right from the preclinical stage all the way to post-marketing. Every single step of the way, this modeling strategy is useful. And access to individual level data, PK, and associated covariate can be very critical. If you look at population pharmacokinetic modeling strategy as well, you notice all the way from clinical trial stage to post-marketing stage of drug development. POP-PK strategies are incredibly very useful. So this is just to illustrate the fact that model-informed drug development strategies are very critical and they are becoming increasingly more important in drug development. And so the availability of individual level PK data would also continue to be critical. Now we'll pause there for a minute, and I would like to pose this question to you. If you can scan this QR code, this will allow you to get access to the Mentee meter that I set up for this. And the question is, why do we, or better still, why do you need individual level PK data? So can you think about that for a few seconds, and then go to this, use this QR code to access this, and provide your response there. Just to get an idea of where you are at in terms of what you think you might use this data set for. Starting from in silico model validation, these are just examples. It could be any other type of model, all the way to not sure, maybe you're still thinking about it. So if you can put in your responses, and then we'll come back to this later on. So you can scan this QR code, or you can join mentee.com and then use this code 35976431. So we'll come back to this later to see what your responses look like. Now let's now make a start with data requests on PKRxiv. There are two major strategies for requesting data, and I would like to make a start with the use of PKRxiv Explorer for data requests. The first step is to explore the data, and this is done by browsing through what is available using a set of filters. We'll go there shortly. You select the appropriate filters. For instance, this could be the name of the drug you're interested in, the population that you're interested in, the study design or the formulation of the drug, the dose of the drug, and so on. So you select all of those filters to explore the data. And this provides real-time access to the PK profile based on the filters that you've selected. If it matches your interest, you request the data. To request the data, you need to log in. So if you don't have an account yet, or you're not logged into your account, then you'll be prompted to create an account. You complete the login request. Once you log in, then you can complete the data request form, and then you submit it. Once you submit, then you wait for approval. Usually, we aim to approve as quickly as possible. So if there are no issues with your request, you should receive another email indicating that your request has been approved. When you submit your request, you also receive an email that your request has been successful. Now, just to show you how the filters look like, so this is a snapshot of the kind of filters that you see. And this is the PK profile. And as you toggle through these different menus, for instance, if it is intensive PK data set that you're interested in, that based on your filters, then you see the intensive PK profile. If it is sparse PK data, then you see sparse PK plot. And then you can have a look at the PK parameters. This is similar to the aggregate that we publish in clinical studies. So you can have a look at the aggregate to see, just to have a feel of the data set that you're looking at. You can have a look at a summary of the demographics, again, in summary form, similar to what we publish. You can generate a data report. If you're still thinking, maybe you want to have a look at a couple of examples of data set, so you can generate your report, compare them before you actually go ahead with your request. And the report will look something like this. We provide you with a table which would include the name of the drug, the sample type, that's the biological matrix that you've selected, the population type, and so on. And then it provides a table, the second table, which is participant demographics. And then it provides you with a figure. The figure is the PK profile, intensive PK profile of your population, and then a table of the PK parameters summary. Similar to what we publish in PK studies. So these are the things that you can do with the PKRxiv Explorer before you actually make a request. So let's have a look and see how this works in practice. So I'm going to stop sharing, stop presenting, and then take you to my browser, which would allow you to explore the data explorer on PKRxiv. So when you go to the website, this is the home page. If you have not been there previously, when you go to data explorer, then this is where you find. So these are the filters. If you want to explore the data, you can make a selection between intensive or sparse PK. So that allows you to do that. And then you can select the study type. There are two different study types. You have standard PK studies and you have perinatal PK studies. So perinatal PK studies, these are studies having to do with pregnant and lactating women. Standard PK studies, these are studies for every other population type that you can think of. And then you can select the drug of interest, depending on how many drugs fall under this category. You can select the sample type, population type, the route of administration, and so on. And here you have additional filters. For instance, the example that I've selected here, nitazoxanide, metabolite, tixosinide, under standard PK studies, this is a drug-drug interaction study, drug interaction with atazanavir, ritonavir 300 and 100 milligram. That is 300 milligrams of atazanavir and 100 milligrams of ritonavir. And just to show you what this looks like, so right now, both of these filters are selected, and you can see both profiles where there is co-administration with atazanavir, ritonavir, and then without co-administration. So this is nitazoxanide alone, but what you're looking at is the PK profile of the metabolite. That's how this drug is studied. If you unselect any of this, for instance, if you unselect this one, then look at what we change. Then this is what you've got. So you've got profile of the tixosinide alone without co-administration of atazanavir, ritonavir. So that's what happens when you change the filter. You change the filters, then the profile that you're looking at would also change. And that allows you to visualize the data set. And to show you what I showed you previously, you can toggle through this. You can look at the PK parameters like the AUC, Cmax, Cmean, Tmax. Again, that also changes depending on what you select. If I unselected that as an example and I go back, then what I'm looking at is only what remains selected. And you can go through the demographic data. You can generate data report. When you click on this, that's when you generate the kind of data that I showed you previously. So that's how to explore the data set. And then you can make a request. For instance, if I want to request data set using this strategy, then I go to this tab. So from this tab, I can click on request, select data set. So you notice what I said previously, that you need to log in to be able to do this. So I'm going to log in with my account. Let me log in with this particular account. You can do the same if you already have an account on PKRxiv. So, and then I'm going to put my password here and then sign in. So that works. So you notice I clicked on request and then it asked me to log in. I logged in. So it has automatically populated this data request form with the details that I selected. All the details that I selected previously have been added to this form now for me to now provide. So what I'm going to do now is to complete any aspect of the form that I have not yet completed. For instance, here, this is compulsory. So this component, the upper part of the form, that's pre-populated based on the filter that you selected. But this is one you've got to do yourself. What will you be using the data for? So that's really important. And if you go through this, it asks you to provide a very clear statement regarding what you want to use it for. What type of model are you developing? Do you have a funder? Do you have collaborators? Do you have any commercial interests? And then, do you intend to publish the whatever outputs you get from the use case? So let's imagine that this is the statement that you've provided. I've copied this from elsewhere. Now you provided this. It has to be up to at least 500. So I'm going to repeat some of that. So this is now 585. Should be sufficient to illustrate. If you need more text, then you can go as high as 1,000 characters. And then you need to then go through the terms and conditions, which I would encourage you to go through. Part of the terms and conditions include the fact that when you make use of dataset on PKRxiv from a published study, you will be given the study, the citation to the study, and you've got to cite the study, you've got to cite the use of PKRxiv, and a couple of other things. So please go through this, and once you've done that, then you can check this box to confirm that you have read and agreed with that. And then you're ready to submit. So I'm going to click on submit now, just to show you how this works. So I clicked on submit, and it's gone. So you can see now that it took me to what we call the data management workspace, which is also accessible from here, workspace. And my data request, this is where it is. So pending review, that's what you see. And if you open this, then you see what you've requested. So you see all the details that you put in there, all the filters that you've selected, and it's pending review. So the question is, what happens after this? So the PKRxiv team will then receive an email indicating that the request is pending review. Like I mentioned previously, usually we process this as quickly as possible. So let's imagine that this was processed and it was approved. So what do you see when it's approved? So I've reviewed this in the backend, well, which you can all see, and you can see the status has now changed to approved. So what happens is you will receive an email telling you that your data request has now been approved by the PKRxiv team. And then, or if you are still logging in, even without checking your email, you see the status change to approved, as you can see here. If you open this again, now you can see this main data, one-time download. So you can then download your data set using this one-time download link. Additional data for this particular study, for this particular one, there are no additional data set. But if there are genetic data available, you see another link under genetic data. Safety and efficacy data, you see another link under safety and efficacy data. So whether you have one download link or two or three depends on the particular study that you've requested. So if I can go back to my slides now. So that is basically how to request data using the PKRxiv Explorer, as I've just illustrated. So that's one way to request data. But I'll pause for a moment just in case there are questions ready for me to address based on this particular approach. Shaquille, if you could please help to confirm if there are any questions in the Q&A or chat.
There are no questions at this instance.
All right, thank you. So now that we've covered how to request data using the PKRxiv Explorer. So next, I would like to cover how you do exactly the same, but this time using what we call data cards. It follows a series of steps as well, very simple steps. But the first thing for this is you need to log in. Once you log in, you select your data, you request the data, you complete the data request form similar to what we've done a couple of minutes ago, and then you submit. And then you wait for your request to be processed. Again, when it's processed, you'll receive an email. Now, here is an illustration of what the data card looks like. This is another unique feature of PKRxiv. If you've been on the website or you saw the home page when I opened it a few minutes ago, you notice this is how the data card looks like. Right at the top there, you find the drug name. And then on the right, you see the study ID. This is the PKRxiv study ID assigned for the study. Under the drug name, you see the study population. In this particular illustration is neonate. So it means the participants in this study were neonates. After that, you see the participant number. In this case, there were 12 participants. Next is study design. For this example, the study design was intensive PK study, crossover study. You could find another example with intensive parallel. If you're familiar with design of PK studies, you would understand the differences between crossover and parallel studies. Next is plasma. This is the sample time. So this depends on the particular sample. It could, for instance, be dry blood spot. It could be breast milk. It could be urine. It could be cerebrospinal fluid, and so on. So that's the sample type. And then here you find the study DOI. The dataset DOI assigned on PKRxiv for this particular dataset. And then on the right, you find the date of release on PKRxiv for this dataset. So this is a really nice way for you to have a very quick look at a particular study to see if it meets your requirement for the application, for the use case that you have in mind for the dataset. And then here you notice this profile. So whenever you see this profile on a data card, it means this is an intensive PK study design, right? Now, let me show you a variation of this. So here is a variation of this where you have dots overlaid on this. So if a data card looks like this is what it means. Is a combination of intensive and sparse, right? If there is no if this profile is not there, this intensive PK profile, if they're not there, it means it's only sparse, right? So again, it's a really nice way for you to have a quick way of visualizing so that you can determine whether this is what you need or not. When you open the data cards page on PKRxiv, this is what you find. So you find a selection of cards that are currently available. It's displayed 6 cards on a page. And then on the left hand side, you can see the filters. Very similar to what we did for the PKRxiv Explorer. So when you make a selection of different variables on this filter page, then this will change to match what you've selected. This is an example. If, for instance, you selected dolutegravir, which is an example of a drug that is currently there, you selected plasma blood as your sample type, you selected oral as your route of administration, and so on. So all of these filters populate this top part of the search box, and then the cards on display will then change to match the filters that you've selected. So let's go back to PKRxiv again to illustrate how you do this in practice. I'll stop sharing and then I'll bring up the PKRxiv. This time I'll go to the data cards page. So because I'm already logged in, I'm able to access this page. So if I wasn't, then if I click on the data cards page, I'll be asked to log in before I can access this particular feature. So let's do another exercise similar to what we've done before, but this time we're going to use a different drug. So let's say we're selecting ripivirine as our drug of interest. If you select that ripivirine, you notice there is only one card. And the reason why we're seeing one card is because there is only one drug for ripivirine, only one study, one data set for this particular drug. If on the other hand, we selected efavirenz, you notice there are 4 different cards that came on display. And if you selected sample type, again, you notice several sample types. So you can select any sample type. For instance, I will select breast milk. I've selected breast milk and there is only one study that came up, right? So there are 2 ways to request this particular data set. You can request directly on the card, or you can request by clicking on request data set here. Now, let me tell you the difference between these two. If I selected plasma blood as an example, instead of the other option, then I've got 4 different studies coming up. If I click on request this data set, I'm requesting this particular data set with 25 participants alone, right? Just this one. But if I clicked on this, it means I'm requesting all 4 data sets. So you can see the difference there. So again, this allows cross-study combination of data and comparison like we've mentioned previously. So let's leave it this way and then request all 4. So I've done that. Again, once you click the data request button, this top part of the form will be pre-populated. Then my job is to follow up by completing the remaining parts of the form, which I'm now going to complete. So I've completed that. I've got 585 words, characters. I will agree with the terms and conditions, and then I'm going to click on submit. So I've submitted. Again, just as before, it's showing as pending. So it is pending, and you can notice here that there are 4 different data sets that I have requested. If you open that again, you see exactly what you've completed. And one feature that I didn't mention previously that I'd like to call your attention to is here, citations for data reuse. So here you can see clearly, it tells you the list of studies from which this data set originates. And it mentions this must be cited for data reuse. If you go through the terms and conditions, you find this on that there. If you look at the previous one that has been approved, you should notice something. All right, it's okay, that's not there. So it's under this one alone. So that's one feature to take note of. So if this is approved by the PKRxiv team, just as before, maybe after they looked at the specific details that we put in and then they decided to approve it, it will be similar to what we've seen before, that you then have that request showing as approved. So if I refresh this page now, this has been approved, as you can see. And if you open this up, again, you notice one-time download of the PK data set. So you might wonder, how does this look like in practice? So let's download it. So I'm downloading this now. I'm going to save this under downloads, and then I'm going to open up the data set. So here's the data set that you've requested or that I have requested and to which I've been given access. So you'll notice that this is this is individual level PK data and the associated covariates. And you see the different, the particular drug concentration is in this column, and you can see all the other parameters in the other column. And just for you to see, this is one of the studies. So one study alone provided you access to all of these data set just from one study. And then the second study start from here, and you got access to all of that information. And then after study 2, you have another study there starting from here and so on. So just with those few clicks of a button, you're getting access to all of these data set. So you have access to more than, this is 1,778 different data points that you've been given access to on PKRxiv. Just with those simple clicks of the button that I just showed you. So if I go back to my slides now, and then we can continue. I've got a few more slides to show you. I've told you about the data management workspace, how you can manage your request from there. And you can delete your request from that page if it has not been approved and you really, sorry, that's about your contribution, your request, you just wait for it to be approved. I showed you the details of the request, how you can access that. I already showed you how to monitor the approval and how to download using the one-time download link. And one thing to pay attention to is once you use the one-time download link, you wouldn't have access to it again. So it's one-time download and it's not going to be available for you after that. And the reason I'll tell you, if you go to this example as just to illustrate, you notice here your file has been downloaded. So that's what you see. Your file has been downloaded. You wouldn't be able to download it again. So if you want to request the same data set, then you've got to submit a new request. And it's a safety strategy for data set that just in case the owner of the data, the person who contributed the data, decided to make changes, so that if you make a request, your request is downloaded, it's only valid as downloaded. So if you request the data set again, then you would have the opportunity of getting the updated data set. It's very unlikely that things will change, but we just put that strategy there just to make sure people have access to the latest information all of the time. So I'd like to conclude with a few more slides. And the first of these couple of final slides is about data sharing models. Or the first data sharing model that we implemented on PKRxiv is unrestricted. So if the data set that you've requested access to is shared under unrestricted data sharing model, it means anyone can use it. And the only terms and conditions that apply are those that you find on PKRxiv. And it doesn't matter whether you are non-profit or for-profit organization. And the decision to release the dataset is made by the PKRxiv team. The next one is non-commercial. Again, it's very similar with the assumption that you can only use this dataset if you are using it for non-profit purposes. The PKRxiv team makes the decision about data use. If you are for profit, then you cannot use a data set that is marked non-commercial. And this is one of the things we look at when we look at the data request form that you've submitted. On the other hand, contributor controlled, the decision to release data set shared under this model are made by the data owner. And you can see that it's owner terms and conditions. So if you request a data set that is shared under this model, the owner of the data set will receive an email and they would make the decision about releasing the data set to you. And one of the things that will help them to decide is When you submit your request, you will receive a data sharing agreement automatically once you submit your request. So you've got to look at the agreement, and then you've got to sign it, fill the necessary components, and then you upload it. So when you upload the signed data sharing agreement, then the owner of the dataset will receive the email, an email indicating that you've done that. And they will be in a position to then evaluate your request. So once they approve, automatically you receive another email saying your request has been approved. Go to the platform, log in so that you can download your data. So I thought I'll share that with you. And next is the potential use cases. If you think about the possibilities, they are endless. There are so many possible use cases for the data set that are currently available on PKRxiv and those that will come in the future. And the available data set that you find on PKRxiv at the moment include more than 5,500 individual data points from 907 unique participants from across the globe, specifically from 3 different continents, from North America, Africa, and Asia. And then we've got 6 different sample types. That's biological matrices, including plasma, breast milk, cervical-vaginal fluid, cord blood, and so on. So what are the next steps? We encourage you to take your seat at the table and make a request if you think you need any of these data sets, or look out for new data sets that will come on PKRxiv. If you go to PKRxiv, let me show you very quickly how to monitor new data that have been contributed. If you go on the platform, you go to curated under resources. If you go to curated studies, then you see studies that are currently curated on PKRxiv. Hopefully in the future, we'll find a way to implement a strategy to send you an automatic email when new data sets become available. So that's one thing you can do to make use of the data that are available. It doesn't matter whether you are a postgraduate student, you are a PI, you are early career researcher, it doesn't matter your stage. We would look at your request and approve it if it's completed the way that we expect. And if you've conducted PK studies in the past, clinical PK studies would encourage you to share your data. So share your data, even if it's not currently published in a peer-reviewed journal. So what you could do, if your paper is on a preprint server and you have a DOI assigned to it on the preprint server, then at that point, you can begin to contribute your data on PKRxiv, because that's what we use to verify the availability of the underlying study before you can contribute data on PKRxiv. The details about that will be shared in a future webinar that will be focused on data sharing. We encourage you to look out for that. So I'd like to end it there and confirm if you've got any questions. Thank you for your time. Any questions, please? Maybe in the Q&A, let's have a look and see if there are questions that are already there. So I'll start from Abdul Jalil's question that it's useful and user-friendly. How difficult it is to convince people to share their data? Yeah, that's a really good question. So it's an interesting question. And I think my straight answer would be it is not easy. It is not easy, but I think the community is moving in the right direction. Data sharing is becoming the standard. And what I will encourage people to do is to think about that while you're designing new studies. So when you're designing that participant information leaflet or consent form, don't forget to include a clause about sharing for broad research use, on specific future use, it is really critical to make sure you include that in your consent form. Otherwise, it becomes a difficulty to share. And I think that's what has made it difficult for some people. So the second question, is this webinar going to cover depositing data into the platform? I guess I've answered that question from Abdulaziz. So that will be covered in a different webinar that hopefully will take place soon. Then how long does it take from the time the data were requested for you to receive them? Again, I believe you've seen that. So it could be just like that, within seconds. It could be within minutes. It could be a day. But the only thing that can cause delay is if there are issues with the details provided. For instance, I showed you some of the information that would be good to have. Do you have a funder? What type of model are you developing? Do you have a commercial interest for this particular project? And so on. So if you provide all of those details, it is very quick. If there are missing details, what we do, we reach out to you as quickly as possible for clarification. So the sooner you can clarify, then the sooner we will be able to process the request. And then another question is this data limited to HIV drugs? No, it is not. So the reason why we have a lot of HIV drugs at the moment is because that's where we've done a lot of studies, and that's where a lot of our collaborators have done a lot of studies, but it is disease agnostic. It could be any disease, any population. And then significant amount of publishing individual data for antibiotics in Japanese populations. Yeah, with dosing and demographic info as well. Yeah, that will be, if you have data set in any population for any therapeutic area, we would encourage you to take a look at your consent form and your institutional policy and see if you can share the data. But we strongly believe that if your consent that you provide, the consent you provided for the participant, the consent provided by the participant, if it allows you to share data, we strongly believe that there is hardly any institutional policy that we've not considered in the functionalities that we've built into the PKRxiv. Worst case scenario, choose the contributor controlled data sharing model. That is worst case scenario. So if you choose that, then you are in total control of your data set. In fact, we're not involved. We can't even approve it. We will be unable to approve it. You are the only ones who can approve it. So we built the platform in that way. And then you can make a decision about the details of the data sharing agreement. And you can make a decision about the particular use case. Somebody sends you the completed data request for a data sharing agreement, and you look at the use case. If it's in conflict with your interests, you can make a decision not to share. That is very rare, but it's possible. So I'm just saying that just to illustrate the fact that worst case scenario, the contributor control data sharing model, we very likely cater for any policy that your organization may have. So that's the final question that we've got there. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for attending today's webinar. So the video for this webinar, I think it will be shared with you automatically once the video is available, and it would also be available on PKRxiv for future users to watch. So we look forward to seeing you again for our next webinar. So thanks again for attending, and do enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Bye.